You're grinding every day. Long hours, no backup, no accountability. That ends now. The Empower Solopreneur Mastermind gives you one simple advantage: a weekly power session that turns isolation into domination. Every Friday morning on Zoom, you'll get real coaching and real feedback to make real moves. Join a group of driven professionals in a program designed for solopreneurs and people working at home. Stop getting stuck. Start scaling. Seats are limited. Lock in yours today at modernobserver.com/empower-mastermind.
We are lighting the candle, a world that works. Hello, everyone. I'm Bill Correll, and I'm here with my most cherished buddy and partner in world empowerment, Jan Jeremias. And how are you doing today, Jan?
I'm doing okay. I'm feeling a teeny bit under the weather
Yeah.
today, but as you notice, kind of bundled up here. But I'm here, so
Well,
I
I,
will.
I can relate. A week ago, it was 21 degrees while I was packing my car up, and that was warm because it was 7 degrees
I
first thing in
know,
the morning.
I know, because I think it was a week ago Friday. I went out to walk Tonka, and I was on with Mary Jane. And at one point, I'd been on for 2 hours, and she said to me, "Are you wearing your coat?" I just couldn't get warm. That was the day the real feel was 5.
Wow.
And I was just like, I just couldn't, like, it was in my bones. I just could not get warm.
Well, I'm going to turn myself in because I referenced last Monday. That's when I got in my car and started heading south to Florida. And it took me it took 2 days to get to the most northern part of Florida, where I spent a night there as well. But it was fun to watch the thermometer, temperature gauge on my car go from the 20s to the 30s to the 40s to the 50s and then to the 80s. Oh, and that's what it's been down here in Florida for the last 3 or 4 days. I got here on last Wednesday to Melbourne Beach, and as I don't know, I'm Edgewater. It's a beautiful little town. It reminds me of so many shore towns all the way up and down the east coast of the United States. Lots of good food. Um, Probably a high concentration of people who are on vacation, generously leaving their money behind, and in some cases, just plain having a good time. So here we are, 2026. That seems kind of odd, to say, but since this is our first podcast that we're recording in 2026, I guess there's a few different things that we can cover. But in the area of empowerment and access to choosing the situation that you're in outside of the circumstances, the distinction being that no matter what's happening to you, there may be something that you can do to uh, tailor your own response to it. That's what they say. You can't do anything about what happens to you. All you can do is something about how you respond. So I think with that in mind, this is the time of year that a lot of people set resolutions. And my favorite new meme is I made a really long list of new resolutions for 2026. And first thing off the bat, uh, my plan was to become a lot more organized. And then I lost the list. So in terms of resolutions, I guess that's about the half-life of a resolution is how do you keep it alive? How do you keep it at the forefront? How do you analyze whether or not it's the correct resolution to be working on or if it needs to be retooled? Sometimes, what you say you want to do requires some other things first. And sometimes it's what you think you ought to be doing and then find out that maybe it's really not, it's not for you. Um, for me, my resolution came from just making a decision that I wanted to get my car working fully. So the ulterior stated motive for the trip was to come down here and have an expert put in 7 cylinders in my convertible top on my car, so it would just work without me having to worry about it leaking. Well, that's accomplished now, and I've made so many new friends over the last week and a half, some of whom I'll remember their names, some of whom I will not. And for me, that's how I want to live life, going through situations, meeting new people, and having everyone be a friend. I just haven't met them yet. Does that make any sense to you, Jan?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just yeah, it's very nice to sit there and say, okay, just to try to see people for who they are and on your behalf, not like on your side, not expecting anything from anybody except for the fact that they're there with you. Like
Yep.
that's your only expectation, basically is like they show up however they show up. And there is no expectation basically. Um, so I mean it's a beautiful intention. Um or resolution. I don't use the word resolution. So that's a word that kind of rubs me the wrong way, but that's besides I can't stand that word resolution.
I'm with you. I've never been that I've never been that forceful in my description of my feelings about it, but say some more about, what's missing for that word for you.
No, it just always reminded me of like these commercials on TV about New Year's resolutions with people like all gung ho and then it not lasting more than, like you said, a few weeks.
Yeah.
And kind of, and so I think that, years ago, when I started to get into more mindfulness and yoga, it was much more about what was my intention for the year. That had like a much different type of feel for me, that
Yeah.
resolution. And then now I've moved even away from that. And now I just choose a word for my year, and that's or two words that kind of sum up what what I'm going to focus on during the year.
Since we've been doing this for a couple of years, I was exactly thinking that one thing. I'm wondering, what is your word for this year, or 2 words?
My two words are radical acceptance.
Radical acceptance. Well, let's dive into that a little bit. What does that mean for you?
That means basically being present enough or being present so that I accept whatever's going on.
Hmm.
Good, bad, and different. It doesn't matter if I'm experiencing it, whether it's true or false, whether if I'm experiencing it, it's true for me,
Right.
then I can just sit there and say, okay, I accept this or this belongs. And then I can move on and say, okay, well, you know, then I can dive deeper or decide to dive deeper or let it
Right.
go and say, this is just, a thought I've had 1,000 times or what but it's all true about presence, about being present for things. And so that
Mm,
it also means accepting in that accepting all the parts of myself, the part
interesting.
I actually really wish I might label as bad or that I wish I didn't have, and really embracing all of it,
Yeah.
good, bad, and different, ugly, like everything about myself. So that's
Yeah.
for the year and no pressure on my end. Mary Jane said to me, she's like, no pressure, huh? I said, me put pressure on myself? Never.
Yeah, right. Okay. That would be a new thing you're doing, not. Yeah. Well, here's my thought. Might be kind of fun to describe present, that term, the mindfulness aspect to it. There's another aspect of clearing a space for something to occur as it is, as opposed to having thoughts about what you think it is. And I love that you distinguished it that way, good, bad, or indifferent. The other thing that comes to mind is that how often do we ever, like setting a place at a table for a guest to come? Uh, I mean, you would take things off the table that were there because you accumulate them, like the mail, yesterday's newspaper, um, whatever you've stacked up, that needs the silver that needs cleaning, all two pieces of it, whatever the heck it is that's kind of in that space. And the neat part of it is for something to truly occur as it is, the context has to be, pretty clear. So, for example, you can picture a salad that's being served at a five-star restaurant, and that salad is comprised of the same elements that it would be anywhere else. It's got lettuce, it's got tomatoes, it's got onions, it's, well, depending on whatever you like. So pretend that you know what all those ingredients are and picture them in this china bowl, bone china that probably costs upwards of $300 a plate. Okay, let's just start there. Gilt edges, and it's probably 200 years old. It might even have been in a state house somewhere, used but with really really fancy political people and that sort of thing. Now you take that same salad and you put it in a wooden bowl. The bowl cost about, the whole set costs $3.50. That's for the mixing bowl and for all the bowls that you serve the salad in. The salad hasn't changed. The same salad. But the salad in the wooden bowl is probably something that you'd pay, I don't know, between $4 and $5 for at a restaurant. The salad in the bone china, because of where it is and the context of it, now all of a sudden, it seems to have changed value. But if you just thought about this and you just had a place that was cleared on the table and you put the ingredients out on the table, not in either one of the two bowls, it would have a completely different context. You
Mhm.
know, what does it take for you to appreciate all of the ingredients, with all, six of your senses?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on whether, yeah, I mean, I actually love that image and I love the way you described that because as you were talking, I'm sitting there going, "Oh, it's such an interesting thing to think about," or to ponder like what is, um and and I think you might have to, might have to dig into it a little bit yourself as to like what that means for you. Each person might come to something slightly different. And as you sit there and say it, I mean, I think in some ways, let's say there are certain circumstances that obviously there's a lot we can't control. So much of it is how we come to that situation or come into that's what it reminds me of. It's how we come into it. Do we come in as a wooden bowl or do we come in as bone china? And sometimes circumstances outside of ourselves, like, or it's within ourselves, basically. Like we wake
Right.
up, we wake up and we're feeling grouchy. And then it has a way of wilting the lettuce and of, like, like decrisping the tomatoes and all,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
kind of thing. And so something like we don't even really know why. We went to sleep and maybe it was what we ate yesterday. And maybe it was, the dreams we had that night. And we wake
Right.
up all of a sudden, it's a different bowl or a different plate
Yeah.
that we're serving on. And in some cases, it's being, I want to say, and I don't mean blank in the fact that it's empty. It just means open to me,
Yeah.
open to whatever the experience is going to be, so that you're not trying to control it so much. There's a little bit of flow and flexibility there, a little bit of like, okay, we're giving all these vegetables room to breathe as opposed to cramming them all into a dish.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that makes sense. But
Well, you're starting to point to something, and it's very difficult for us to, um, isolate a context, if you will, or separate our focus from the whole, everything that's going on, the room, the stuff that's on the rest of the table, the people that are around us, the noise that's going on, and then to actually see the ingredients of the salad and be able to taste it with your eyes first, and then with your sense of smell, and then your uh, sense of taste. And then when you put it in and you actually eat it, the crunchiness of it and whatever flavors then come out, and are released during that process. It's a metaphor for a whole lot of different things. And I can tell you, from a practical standpoint, I can take this and I can lay it right on top of how I felt with my car leaking hydraulic fluid from the cylinders, and there was nothing I could do about it other than tearing my back seat out of my car. And doing that in 15 or 18 degree weather in the Northland is a stupid idea. I mean, it really is not something that I'm okay. So I'm stupid because I considered doing it. Okay, but the point is that how I felt driving that car, and especially because as I was heading down here on the highway, driving 10 hours, 2 days in a row, I started having the pulsing, with the front brakes, which I know that meant that the rotors are warped. And so now I got these things going on, and I'm afraid to get too close to cars in front of me at high speeds. And every time I drop back 8 or 10 car lengths, what happens is somebody passes me on the right and then comes up and fills that space in front of me. So now I'm too close again, and there's just all of this mishigas going on, right? I don't know if there's an H in Missigash, or if it's without it, it's Missigash. But that's really getting into an area of language that I've only heard it. I've never seen it written. But
Okay,
my
with a name. You just did that. Just so you know.
Michigash. Okay, good. So now that we've cleared that up and I'm edified in terms of Michigash, I will be able to expand on that just a little bit. After the work was done, I get in my car, nothing. It's like a given that the top's going to go up and down. So of course, I had to test it. I had to try it a few times and then go and look and make sure that the hydraulic fluid didn't go down in the reservoir. And I mean, we do that all the time. People talk about living a life where it's kind of like walking on ice. You're not sure how thick it is, and if you have no other information, every time you hear the ice crack as you're walking, you don't know if it's going to break and you're going to fall through into the water. But people who skate all the time, and who also ski and are around, bodies of water that are completely frozen, they know that it's a natural thing as ice expands in a finite area where it's actually up against the boundaries of land all the way around it. It has to do something, so it makes a cracking sound here and there, and it has nothing to do with it being safe or unsafe, because it could be 6 or 7 inches thick. Do we live our life listening for the cracking sound, or do we live our life, just wonderfully, gliding along on our figure skates at 20 miles per hour, just enjoying the breeze in our face and hair? What is life like, for us? And are we satisfied with that experience of life? Is there something that we'd like to do? When you said controlling, I kind of take that to mean, having an effect on it, that you and I get to say a little something about how our lives go. Is it more like that?
Well, I think that's what everybody wants.
Yeah.
I think that is to have a little bit of control. But I think there's one thing, you know, and it's not to like necessarily ignore whatever's like you could have ignored the car
Yeah.
and had it leak, kind of thing. And it's not choosing, like, it's not ignoring, but it's also, I don't know, it has a little bit more give, like, than control.
Yeah.
there's more there's more space and more breathability. I think that's a word. A breathability there.
There is now. Yeah.
There is now, there is now, I created it. Like, it's a little bit more porous. It's like having a cell membrane, and the cell membrane has integrity. It has integrity, otherwise everything would spill out and everything else would spill in, it
Right.
has integrity. But yet it's breathable. Like, I mean, nutrients come in, stuff gets excreted out. So it's malleable,
Right.
and you need that, you know. So I think it's almost like you there's an openness to, like, okay, and also there's almost this, to me, this idea of, let's say, exploration and experimentation of,
Yes.
and you spoke to it when you said resolutions. Is it like, I do this resolution for 2 weeks and it's not a major catastrophe if I realize, like, okay, that was not the resolution, or I need to tweak that resolution because that just doesn't, like, my goal was too lofty and I need to manage it a little bit better. But I don't think there's anything wrong with sitting there and saying, okay, this has to be flexible enough to be able to, like, allow me some places of experimentation and growth. And when you spoke to resolutions, like, I've been reading a lot about, like this idea, what's the next best step I could take? Like, not the whole picture,
Right.
but if I move from the present moment and I'm truly present in this moment right now, what's the next best thing I can do? And so I've been focusing a lot on that because I think it makes it a little bit less stressful than
Sure.
thinking of this lofty goal that you have somewhere in the future that you want to get to, as long as you're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
To clarify.
Well, the thing is that if everybody's doing it, it may or may not be appropriate for you. And the artificiality of the new year, meaning this is the time to change your life, guys, that you can do that every single day. You've got that power 365 days a year, 366 some years, but the point of having an external reminder or a context that basically says that now that we're at the beginning of a new year that is pristine, that is open, you can do anything that you want with it. We have this mentality that lasts about, maybe 2 or 3 weeks into the new year where people make decisions. They're going to lose weight. They're going to get in the best shape of their life. They're going to go through all their wardrobe. They're going to get rid of the things that don't fit them anymore. They're going to go through their house and they're going to clean the closets. They're going to clean out the junk drawer, and it's tiring.
Well,
The motion for motion's sake, just so you can say that you did something, is quite different than making a choice every day to work on 2% better. 2% better today than yesterday in some area of your life, and then decide what you want to work on today. Like a new question every day.
and to your point, Mary Jane and I, the past 2 weeks on our Friday calls, have talked about, instead of starting the new year with, let's say, an intention resolution or whatever, what if
Right.
you started the new year with a pause?
Yeah.
With a pause. And so, in a lot of, like, mindfulness sort of whatever, they call that the sacred pause. Like, this, there's an idea of, like, okay, like a conscious pause.
Yep.
Like, you're present for this pause. Like, okay, like a deliberate, like, it's a pause being an action, like,
Yeah.
I'm actively pausing. Like, so what if you started the year from there,
Yeah.
as opposed to, like you said, rushing into, like, automatically saying, okay, well, everybody's exercising, so I'm going to exercise, or everybody's switching their diet. So and these are decisions you could make every day if you chose them, or, not only during the new year. But I think for me, coming from the way I tend to be, let's say my persona, my being, those ideas of doing that kind of stuff always feels very daunting.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, well, what if I started this year with a pause instead? and just say, okay, I'm pausing. like, I'm putting myself on pause.
I think you and I are kindred spirits and always wanting to explore that area. And what tends to happen, I think, at least what people tell me, is having the intention of a pause is different than having the discipline of a pause. They're completely different. If you have the intention to mechanically go through a thing called a pause, you're not doing it, in such a way that you're learning something about pausing, because that may be the first thing that you have to get, newly related to. In terms, what does it look like to take time out, to not just do something, stand there, And in some cases, and I think in a lot of cases, that's so hard for human beings to do, like to have a silence that's got nothing going on in it. It makes us nuts. It's like being in a conversation and intentionally waiting for the other person to complete speaking all the way, and then waiting until the other person actually says something again, so that you can just let it all in. And during that silence, allow whatever is natural to come out in your understanding of what got said, because you're now paying attention as opposed to using this valuable time to prepare what you're going to say next when there is a pause. And the sacred pause, I think, my understanding of how that works is when there's really absolutely nothing to do. It's the time where you can inhale, and maybe you can even concentrate on breathing, or maybe you can just concentrate on just newly being aware of your surroundings.
Mhm.
And as the man said, to know the place for the first time, even though you see it thousands of times a week.
That's right. And, you're speaking so much, like, it's like you're speaking to my heart there because, and I don't think there's any, I do think that we have an aversion to silence. Um, Now, I think
Yeah.
people are so, used to having sound all the time,
Yeah.
between reminders and technology and everything. And it's one thing to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to listen to the sounds that are naturally in my home. Like, so the wood creaks, and like you talked about the cold, you know, the sound of the fan when the heat comes on, the vent when the heat comes on, things that we tend maybe not to hear when we're distracted and busy.
Right.
So, and that could be sound. It could be like all of a sudden really looking around your space and seeing what's there. I mean, stuff that you take, that becomes almost invisible because you're so used to seeing it. Or your breath. And then it's just following your breath and knowing that you're probably going to get distracted. I mean, that's just what the mind does. The
Yes.
mind's going to have a thought. And then your work comes from, okay, come back. Like whatever I'm thinking about will be there later if it's important. And even if it's like, it may not even be, and like there may be a lot of stuff that comes in that's not important that you still think about. But
Yes.
it's directing and guiding your mind back. It's like saying, okay, not now. And then coming back to whatever it is, whether it be your breath. And if one doesn't work, try another. Like, I mean, you could be consistent, in the beginning and saying, okay, I'm just going to focus on my breath. That's what I want to focus on and try to.
Yeah.
There are days after all these years where I'm just like, okay, that's not working for me today. Let's try listening to for the sounds, and see whether that helps because, for whatever reason, you know, it's not working today.
I think the interesting part is empowering whatever conversation that you're having in your head and thinking that you're actually enjoying a pause. or it's not working, like the pause is something to do, or something. I think, in a lot of instances, folks who have had a near death experience will appreciate, or at least have some kindred spirit, with what I'm going to say now. And that is, when you wake up, after having gone through a very major surgery, or something where it's quite possible that you were not going to survive that procedure, and you wake up, and I can tell you and describe for myself, not knowing anything about who I was or where I was, having this complete openness. It was blank. I didn't have a thinking context for where I was. I was, you know, I wasn't starting off like a baby with no language. I had all the language, but I was trying to understand in the darkness. It was late at night, and in my hospital room, there were all these little different colored LEDs flashing and everything. And first I thought well, the thought that came to me is I'm in a garage somewhere. I'm in somebody's garage. And then it was like, maybe I'm in a spaceship. I mean, I can't, I have no idea. And, the next thought was, I don't remember my name. I don't remember my past. I don't remember anything. I just started noticing that was all missing for me. And I sat there quietly. You know, the first thought was to panic. This is a weird, weird sensation. The first thought was, to be filled with fear, anxiety, sadness. And then I thought to myself, what's up with this? You know, what in the heck is going on here? And what have I done? And how did I get to this place? And somehow I made it through maybe a period of time. It might have been 15 minutes, might have been 45 minutes. I went back to sleep. And the next time that I was aware, the lights were on. And of course, there were people standing around with hospital scrubs, or whatever you call what people walk, the green and the purples and whatever you call their uniforms that they walk around in. And by that time, I had memory of who I was. But that experience kind of reminded me of when the first time, actually the only time that I ever skydived, that minute of free fall. I was completely aware that there were no thoughts in my head whatsoever. I was really, the last time I could remember having that kind of an experience, or a sensation, or a feeling, goes back to when I thought about, how I used to be when I was born. That there was just really nothing there. It was like every sensation was, and every bit of my senses were front, center, and on task. But I was just amazed by 1 minute, no think, just be. And if you've never done it, I've heard people say that they feel that way sometimes when they're skin diving. When they really start to feel like they're neutrally buoyant, and they're at a place in the water where there's no sensation. They can't feel anything through their wetsuit or through their gloves or whatever. And then all of a sudden, something swims by, and they really can appreciate and focus their attention on it. And then there's other people that are scared to death they're going to run out of air. Did I put enough lead weight on my belt,
Yeah, I mean, I liked water diving when I used to dive. I always liked it. I get that. I would say not. I have, let's say, seconds where that I get that when I meditate or I pause. Like
Yep.
flashes where, like, literally there was no thought for me. And there's nobody, like, I'm not in my body either. Like, I have no, like, awareness of my body. It's
Right.
maybe even a fraction of that, but it feels longer to me than like a fraction of a second. And it probably is because I'm noticing it.
Right.
It's the way I'm feeling. Um, but I think when I think about those, like when I am in those experiences and I come out, so if I've gotten to that place, there is this feeling of most likely, like even if I'm going through the most stressful situation
Right.
that I have going on in my life, I tend to feel better. Or I'm definitely, if I don't feel better, I definitely don't feel worse.
Right.
Let's clarify that. Um, but I do get glimpses, probably obviously not as drastically as something as being like, anesthetized and then coming out and then kind of not knowing. Cause I mean, when I'm in it, I don't know if I know who I am. Like if you were to, like, I mean, my mind is like, like a clean slate, literally blank.
Mm.
But that's for me, um, I mean, it is a gift that I can get there, and I can get there quite easily most of the time. The problem is I can't live there. Like I can't I can't navigate the world from that space. Um, you know, so I have to come back to, the world. But I think yeah, but it is an interesting kind of feeling. And it is to me a very peaceful play, like peaceful feeling. And I think that's the problem with, and I say problem because I don't know that people experience that in their lives. And I think about all the stimulation and all the bombardment and all the information and everything that's out there that we are like kind of that is being like directed toward us all day,
Right.
every day now. And it used to be like years ago. I mean, you know, it just we didn't have all that outwardly people were outside and had like different exposure to different things, but people
Exactly.
didn't have that sort of information overload or, and everything like basically 24 hours a day now. And and then it's to me no surprise that people are kind of like burnt out, stressed, um, you know, feel trapped, unhappy because there's no reprieve. Like they literally don't have time to breathe. There's like no breath, there's no room.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. Hearing you talk, I'm kind of present to the fact of how much we are plugged in. Now that we have smartphones, um, I think back to when the phone used to had to be plugged into a wall, and you could not take it with you. I mean, in our lifetime.
Mhm.
But in my parents' lifetime, they actually had a period of time where the phone only rang if there was business for the phone to ring for, a friend calling. It might only ring a couple of times a day until they got to be teenagers or whatever, my mom and dad. And there was a period in my mom's life, they didn't have a phone. She was born, my dad was born in 34, my mom was born in 36. And she was born in Nebraska. They did not own a phone. Can you imagine where you mail something off to somebody and the answer to it comes 3 weeks later?
Mhm.
Living a life like that, we are in anticipation of the next email that we're going to get 5 minutes from now. But can you imagine going on about your life and whatever routine you have with there being this little background thought that you've got? I've sent something out. I'm expecting a response to it, and I have no idea for sure when it's coming back.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it, I love watching period dramas. It's like my
Yeah.
one of some of my favorite shows to watch or, period pieces where, they all would, they have an element of history that
Yes.
happened or whatever. And I love, and if you look at like, you know, the different times, the fact that people would die and people would know for weeks or be ill. And the only notification may have been a telegram at some point, but in a lot of other circumstances, there was none. I mean, you would wait to get the letter, you know. I have a great aunt that we used to do letters, and my grandmother would get so upset because literally it was like watching, like she would say, like it would be like a one run-on sentence of like her day. It would be like, oh, so and so just rang the bell. You know them. They live next to so and so, so and so, and so and so. And she would go
Wow.
into this whole like, and we would laugh so hard. My grandmother would get really upset because it was her sister-in-law who it was her sister-in-law and also her first cousins, because first cousins married brothers. And so, yeah, it was always very interesting, but they were very close. And it was just so funny because these letters are like known in my family. All you have to do is mention those letters. And my brothers and we just crack up hysterically because they were like treasured. But it was just this feeling of where you didn't know things
Right.
and you were unplugged. And, once you had a TV, basically that TV was never on during the day. I mean, it was on for a little while, like to watch the news,
Right.
maybe to watch a few evening shows after work or, when your homework was done, kind of thing. But
Yep.
basically, unless you were sick, and then it was different. I remember because we only had one TV, which was in my parents' room. So I remember like being sick in bed and we would go get into my parents' bed. My mother would bring us all, whatever we needed, and we would watch TV. But otherwise, we never, I mean, you were outside or you were playing a game or reading a book, but you weren't with an electronic thing in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking back in our situation when we got home from school. If the weather was nice, we were outside riding bikes,
Absolutely.
playing sports in the side yard, playing sports over by the pump house. Um, the only time that we would really, if we were, when you get to the fall, if it's raining or now with the snowy days and stuff, but it's gloppy outside, muddy, you really can't go out and play in it. Then we'd watch Big Three Theater, and that typically would have a Johnny Weissmuller movie, Tarzan or Jungle Jim or something of that nature. Big Three Theater. I absolutely loved coming home to that every day. It was like finding a friend there waiting for us. But
Or
more
Western.
often, or westerns, yeah.
Westerns, good old Westerns.
Yeah, it's funny. I was kind of raised on um well, I mean, obviously was raised on Roy Rogers, and in the day, I was very very much impressed with Roy's ability to play guitar. And at an early age, my mother says I always called it a libber. I couldn't say guitar, but I called it a libber. I want a libber. So they got me one of these little cranky ones that played whatever tune that it played. But uh, yeah, I've grown up and now I have a collection of livers. So and I play it a little bit. So we're in that kind of interesting place where talking about nothing generally leads to having something fill the space very quickly. And I think part of it is our training. And I really wonder if there's uh, like a training program or a detraining to allow people to kind of like decompress and be allowing and willing, for there to be nothing for a while. I know people will go into a sensory deprivation chamber for that purpose to allow their thoughts to dissipate, and then as can happen during meditation, where they actually disappear. That's another place where people find that moment. I don't do a lot of meditating. I do have a kind of a routine that I follow to go to sleep, counting backwards from 20 slowly and doing it according to my breath. And then what really is kind of fun about it is I get to a place where I'm no longer interrupting the count, because each time I have a thought in between a count, like 7, Oh boy, I wonder what that's going to look like tomorrow. Okay, got to start over again. Back to 20. So I will do that until there's nothing there. There's no more story that needs to be, released. And I'm at that relaxation point where I now am starting the narrative of what my dream's going to look like. And I slip into that dream state. And in some cases, there's nothing there. In other cases, it's kind of neat, but it's a my my wonderful wife and I, we have conversations about what we recall that we dreamed. And in her case, she has she has these things that are troublesome. Sometimes it's an outright nightmare. And for me, at this point in my life, I don't have those anymore. My sensation and recollection of the dreams that I have is they're all really kind of weird dreams sometimes. I do have this recurring one. Since it's just you and me and we're really close, and I know you're not going to tell anyone. I have this one where I'm in the public somewhere, could be in a park, and I'm under a blanket, and there's someone next to me, and then I lift up the blanket, and I don't have anything on down there, and I'm covering myself up, trying to figure out I'm going to get out of this embarrassing situation in my dream, and then I usually wake up. So I don't know what that's all about, and I don't have the guts to ask anybody. So
Um, yeah, I mean, for me, I'm probably closer to your wife. And the fact that I tend to have like, probably quite a lot of, what I might say, just anxiety types comes out during that
yeah,
time.
yep,
But um the other way that people kind of get to that space is people go on silent retreats. So basically, or um, if they want to, and I think like one of the key points to me is like to realize it's probably not, I mean, I don't want to make it unattractive to people, but it's probably going to be uncomfortable. I mean, we are so used to having to being distracted
yep,
that when you get quiet, that's why, I mean, I don't usually play music in my classes. And I think that that's why that was in some ways, I mean, I would have students who would say, "Can we play music?" Because, it is like something else to listen to and to either hum to yourself or, sings gently, softly to yourself, as opposed to sitting with your own thoughts and whatever you're feeling, which can
right,
be very uncomfortable, which when everything else is silent, the volume on that tends to get very loud, which is why we distract ourselves to begin with,
right,
because we don't want to experience that. And I think that it's not necessarily like, there are days when you're just like, I always say the last person I want to spend time with is that inner world. Like, I just, like, there's just too much going on up there. I'm like, I really don't want to be here right now.
Well, who was it that said, powerful is the man who can stand the sound of his own thoughts?
That's right. And I think that, but there's nothing wrong with that happening. But there
No,
is
it's a human experience.
a
Yeah,
human experience. And I think that, you know, and I like the fact that like the saying that to people, like, like it happens to everybody. It's like knowing that when you get quiet or you pause, you're gonna think. Like, I mean, you are gonna think. You are gonna experience things.
yes,
You know, and you're probably gonna be a lot more aware of those experiences
yeah,
in some ways, most ways. All of a sudden, it's kind of like if you really taste the food and you're pausing, like let's say you were pausing, like doing like intentional eating or mindfulness eating. It's like all of
right,
a sudden you taste things that you didn't even notice before.
right,
So all of a sudden you're not just shoveling the food in. All of a sudden you're like, oh, this has pepper in it. Oh, this is citrusy. Where, we tend to like get the nuances out versus just this, okay, this is just a salad. all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, these are really salty tomatoes.
Yes. Well, I will tell you, it's very present for me at the moment. The cathartic and presence that I have to enjoy, and really, um, my decision when I'm driving long hours, like I have been come driving down here, is to not have any music on. I'm really very interested in staying alive while I'm going down I-95, playing the game called How Fast Can I Go and Not Get a Ticket, you know? My goal is to never hold up any of the rest of the traffic, and that's really, I mean, you have to get out of the passing lane, and allow the other people who are interested in going 90 or 95, just give them the road. But every minute is heads up, watching what's going on. A truck bobs and weaves back and forth between two lanes. You got to be on your toes. So this is like, being really intentional and being, some type of a practitioner, where a professional driver is not really having daydreams and thoughts about other things while they're on the track. They're looking, how can I maximize where I am, and how can I maximize, my ability to, beat the clock, if you will, when it says on my phone that it's 18 miles left to go and it's going to take 22 minutes and I'm doing a little bit over 80, trying not to hold up traffic. Uh, and I know in my mind, I have this thought that this is a fun game. I'll beat that time.
No, absolutely. And I think whether you're driving or um, you're doing anything else, you
Yes.
can have that, I don't know, kind of deliberate awareness. You can have
Yes.
presence. Um, I think certain situations maybe required a little, maybe required a little bit more, not necessarily, but I think that I always say like something like you're doing where it's dynamic,
Yes.
then you have those types of experiences and you can translate them into everyday experiences
Yeah.
of, I always love Thich Nhat Hanh's kind of analogy of washing the dishes, because washing the dishes is a very experiential task to me. You feel the water, you feel the temperature of the water,
Yes.
you have suds, so it even makes it a little fun, like and so just that being like, you know, and it being a game almost of like, okay, like how clean can I get these? Or can I feel that water? You know, um, all these different things that you can kind of make it, you can gamify it if you wanted to.
Right.
And you can then translate um those types of sacred pauses or that sacredness into other areas of your life. Like, it's not necessarily sitting for a meditation. Or
Yes.
in the meditation world, people will just say, oh, I'm, sitting, but it's doing other things in your life with that same kind of attention.
Yeah. Well, so every once in a while, I feel like you really just hit the nail on the head, um, and kind of bring it back into
Almost
focus
every
again.
once
Well, it's at least 2 or 3 times every time we talk, but, I
in a
don't
while.
want you to get a big head, but you are a huge contribution to how I live my life.
No, I'm just joking with the obvious.
So 2 thoughts that I had, that I think are worth noting. It sounds odd, being from Connecticut and being a Connecticut driver talking about going 80 miles an hour like it's nothing to it. But again, the context is it's probably a bad idea in Connecticut. You're going to stick out like a sore thumb. And quite frankly, you're probably going to be going faster than anybody else on the road because the traffic just doesn't move that way. Down here, where you have 25 miles between exits and the speed limit is 70, the cops aren't interested in you at all at 80 to 85. Um, in my experience, most of the rest of the traffic is going exactly the same speed. So it's again a context sensitive thing, and life is a lot like that, where you're gonna, it's a all our we live our lives like all your friends are doing it, whether you're actively thinking that or just kind of like getting into a rhythm or a resonance with what's going on around you and traveling at the same speed. And now the other thing that you said is I really relate to hand washing, certain items when I cook, because I cook a lot of meals. In every single day of the week, there'll be something that I cook for myself that my wife doesn't eat, and she's not cooking for me. So pots and pans, I have a game that I play, that how clean can I get them? And I have 2 scrubbing brushes. One of them that I have beat on so badly, washing out, hot pans where the bristles are now short. They're discolored. They're all bent over, but I'm not gonna ruin my new brush that I've had now for 2 years. The new brush is 2 years old, and it looks like the day that I bought it and brought it home from probably bought it at TJ Maxx. But the point is that the sacredness is not in the significance of the timeout. The sacredness is in the experiencing of the timeout as a pause and being an opportunity to be present and experiencing that. And that, trying to do that, is always makes it so much harder than to just slipping into it and allowing it to take place, if you will, in
Mhm.
my world.
And I think one of the things you just said triggered something, or just gave me a thought, Bill, and that was to actually sit there afterwards and label it for yourself. Like,
Yeah.
that was like, recognize it. Oh, that was sacred. When you know, I was present, or I paid attention when I did that,
Yeah.
to acknowledge it for yourself, because I think then it kind of, you realize you did it. Like, it's like you've done it, and there's kind of like, not that I'm like, I'm not saying like, oh, it's like a checkbox or a to-do list, like, okay, present, crossed it off my list. But I think that it becomes then, one is you realize maybe how easy it is for yourself. Um, there is some sort of like appreciation and acknowledgement of the fact that you did it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I was present for that. I was truly present.
Yeah, I mean, um, where I where I kinda get the hint of what you're talking about, or what I hear you saying is could be a nonverbal exchange with a child, or it can be, a glance across the room at another human being and sharing that moment and a smile,
Mhm.
or it can be the same thing with an animal, getting a response from an animal and having the animal respond to your response, and then having this kind of little communication that goes on. These folks here have this beautiful, beautiful little wire terrier. I'm not quite sure. It's a Yorkie, okay? Small, and it seems like I've seen 5 Yorkies in the last week at different places. Seems like this is the breed of the people, my age who have dogs. And this little one where I am today came out this morning and greeted me because I was up before anybody else, and kind of came over and tapped on my leg to let me know that she was ready to go outside. And and put her nose on my leg, and then she kind of like backed up and walked over, like she was motioning towards the door, like, come on, moving her head. And I didn't go anywhere because I wasn't sure if they had turned on the alarm, and so at 6 o'clock in the morning, you don't want to have people jumping out of bed with something going, "Ree, ree, ree."
Yep, been there. Um, but yeah, I mean, and I think that it is the same as, if even if you have that kind of moment with yourself, it's like, oh my gosh, like I was truly present for me. I was
Sure.
truly um aware of that experience for myself or that moment, and I think that it doesn't differ, it's like this. And I love that idea of like, it's the same feeling you get when you have that nonverbal connection or verbal connection,
Yeah.
and conversation, or maybe something as simple as just saying, okay, I'm looking around and I'm here at this moment and, you know, appreciating where I am, what I have, and then, and then moving on from there, from that.
I find myself noticing I just had one of those moments where my thought is goes something like, well, that was fun. Or that was really cool. Or I can't say goodbye to that dog or that person. God, I love them. I want to bring them along with me, you know? It was special.
Yeah, yeah. It's when my friend stopped by on Saturday and helped me out with a few things. And I sent her a message afterwards and I said, we have to do this more, like just hang out. Um, because she's my oldest friend that I have literally on this planet because we've known each other our entire lives. Probably if our mothers didn't like, might have known each other before we were born, but if not, it was kind of like when we were like a year old.
Sure.
And so, we just have this like, eh, you know, her husband is hysterically funny. And I just find that I basically laugh almost the entire time we're together. Like there's just this feeling of like his humor, her humor, what comes out in me when I'm around them.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like priceless. I said, we have to do this more. Like just doesn't have, like just hang out,
Yeah.
have, laugh.
Yeah, exactly. I'm up for creating those opportunities in 2026. Like curating the people I'm going to spend time with, you know?
I mean, I think that's really important. And I think that you do that. Like, I think I've started, I think you kind of realize, you know, are these people I really want to hang out with? You know, and are these people I want to spend time with? And it's very interesting because one of the things I reflected on over the past, like, let's say, few weeks are the friendships I've created, let's say, over the past, like, few years, 5 years or so.
Sure.
And I thought to myself, like, I have some great friends, and I also have some really cool friends. Like, I have some
Yeah.
really cool people I hang out with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I was just like, because I think that, sometimes, we don't, I don't know if we notice it, we don't notice it. I went through where I was like really noticing that and appreciating and being thankful, obviously goes along with that. But like the noticing of like, yeah,
Yeah, the noticing is the, the the second cousin to being president.
exactly,
And,
exactly.
and they're both pretty cool, you know? And you don't have to become addicted to this experience. It's like live your life and then just be awake and aware and acknowledge where life is sweet, acknowledge where it seems to be working. And sometimes you're going to have to set down your concern about yesterday or your potential worry about the future and just allow yourself to be where you're right here, right now. That Jesus Jones song, there's no other place I'd rather be, right? Um, my life is an endless string of cliche metaphors.
Like that. It's like my friend Hans is like this unlimited quote person. Like he has quotes for everything.
Yeah.
Like, what he'll say, it's like the quote by so and so in every conversation at least once.
So I've never really cared enough, to footnote the actual people who may have said it before. I just let people who I know and love know in advance. I'm probably plagiarizing everything I ever say, but you know what? I'm saying it how I'm saying it, and I'm really not interested in attributing it to somebody else. I find that sometimes distracting when other people say, according to, it's like, oh boy, here comes an authority.
Yeah,
But
no, it's
most
not.
people who do that are not, they're being responsible, which I refuse to be. So
And it's not according to, that's not how he would ever, but he'll
no,
just
I
say,
know.
it's just the way he says it in every conversation. You're kind of like, like a library of quotes in your head that just like,
Yes.
kind of thing.
Well, I mean, usually it gets sparked by a random trigger, which then
Right.
is like, what would a smart person say about this? And here's something that might make a little difference to somebody, and then you put it out there like a gift. So guess what we did again? Instead of being 25 miles apart or whatever we usually are, we're now about 1,300 miles apart. But we did it again.
I know.
One thought I have is it took me until my age to really have all the particles in place to where I could just do what I'm doing right this minute, which is to head off on the highway, leave my best friend and best girl doing what she loves. She loves her job and she loves her house and she loves her routine. And I'm here visiting folks that mean the world to me, not like they don't mean the world to her, but neither one of us is diminished by the fact that the other one isn't with me or I'm doing this without her. And we've got plans to be back here in Florida in 3 weeks to spend a week here together. So I don't know. All my ulterior motive is to find some things that would make it absolutely impossible for her not to feel like we really do need to sell our home in Connecticut and move down to Florida. So, but that's just kind of like putting it all out there. But in the meantime, I know that it's as futile as trying to move a mountain. But so it's more about just having great times with great people, and when she gets here, for her to experience some of that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that, um, yeah, I think that whole idea to me, like I said, of acceptance, just, this belongs, allow it,
Yeah,
yeah, allow it. And that means everything. I mean, that means allow, like, give yourself permission to feel the joyous things too. You know, I think that in a world where things sometimes get very dark, and well, which there are now, there are a lot of really kind of, I want to say, horrifying things happening, and very easy sometimes. And then there's guilt involved with that too, of like, well, there are
sure.
people out there in the world suffering,
Yep.
and obviously we don't want to forget about those people at all. We can't. Um, Part of our job of belonging to the human race is to actually recognize that, but it's also to recognize that we can feel joy too. And it reminded me, can I share this meme I saw the other day, Bill?
Oh, would you please?
And I absolutely loved it because it's really, I shared it with my students and a number of people this week. Um, and it says, the world is both burning and blooming. You get the bad news and the sunrise in the same day. You cry over the headlines, and then you laugh at a baby wearing a hat shaped like a bear. This is the dual citizenship of being alive. Rage and reverence, grief and grace. You are allowed to feel both. You are allowed to scream and still notice how good the soup is. You don't have to choose, let it all in.
Absolutely perfectly appropriate. Two things can be true at the same time. Yes, and
Yes, and. That's right. Yes, and.
absolutely good place for us to call halt to this end of this conversation right now. But it's an ongoing conversation that we take time out from on a weekly basis. Would you like to make our first invocation of an invitation of 2026?
Sure. So everyone, especially I think during, every time, but I want to say especially during these times, reach out to someone. There are so many people who need to hear your voice, that need to know that they matter,
Right.
are important, that they have value. And I think just remind them of that by a text, an emoji, a call, whatever mode of communication, um, you know, speaks to you at the moment. But just take a moment to really appreciate the people in your life and let them know that.
Perfect. Any other thoughts?
No, yeah, just maybe, take a moment tomorrow morning or even just the rest of today, depending on when you're listening, and just think to yourself, is there one thing I could do that, right now that would kind of like feed me?
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm just going to remind the people. We are lighting the candle, a world that works. And I'm Bill Correll, and I'm here with Jan Jeremias. And I get the honor and privilege of speaking to this beautiful woman once a week, typically for an hour or thereabouts. And I'm going to make it real clear that your ticket to ride is to go out and live your very best life and then come back and tell us all about it, please. God bless all of you, and bye for now.
Bye-bye, everybody.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, a World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can catch every episode of Lighting the Candle, as well as the rest of the network, at exvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.